Hello everyone, welcome to Pathways of Hope. My name is Jake Tan and I'm privileged to actually be giving this last reflection before we move to the new season. I thought it was the last reflection for Pathways of Hope. No. Anyway, just kidding aside. This is an interesting set of verses of scripture because we're just given 3 verses. And it's actually more of like a build-up or a conclusion to something that Jesus has been talking about throughout the Gospel of Luke, especially in this chapter 21. So we're given 3 verses. I want to break it down verse by verse. So the first verse we're given, that's verse 34. Jesus is talking about how the world can be a distraction, that we should be weary about it. And if we find ourselves caught up, if we find ourselves too occupied with it, then it will get in the way of this coming day when the Son of Man comes. He says that this day, like the Son of Man, if we're too occupied with the world, it will come like as a snare, like a trap or something unpleasant. But we know in the previous verses, Jesus is telling us to put our heads up and say, our salvation, our redemption has come when the Son of Man comes. So this is what the first verse is talking about. And in the following verse, the second one, Jesus is talking about how this is going to come upon all people. So whether you like it or not, whether you least expected or you've been preparing for it since day one, this is coming. And Jesus has already been warning us. And throughout these past centuries, these past thousands of years of the church, its goal is really to remind us day in and day out that this is coming. This is something that's already present through the church. And an invitation for us to accept it, to make it something really, to take ownership of it, to make it something part of our lives. And in the last verse, he gives this final recommendation, to be watchful. Another word of describing it is to be vigilant. This is very apt, especially as we enter the new season, because the new season refers to Advent, which is about waiting, which is about the coming of God into our lives. And we see this in 3 ways. One, we're reminded about how Jesus came as a baby, had his ministry, he died on the cross, and then he rose from the dead and he ascended into heaven. And then now the church, so this is the second way of waiting or God's coming. The church period where Christ can come into our lives each and every day, and we have to choose that. And then thirdly, what Jesus was talking about, the coming of the Son of Man here in the gospel, where it will be the end of times. And Jesus will come and reign over all things. So the gospel for today, the verses for today are basically sharing how is the world occupying us so much? Are we concerned with it so much? These finite, tangible things that are secondary to the Lord. Are they occupying our hearts and minds so much that God is no longer the priority? Or we are not mindful of His coming into our lives anymore? And I think this is something that we can work on this coming Advent. It's a good passage to segue into this season of remembering the reason for the season, this holiday period, and the greatest gift of Christ being given to us. And we're invited, should we work on things that compete with Christ in our life? And if we can engage in more things that could allow the Lord to be more present, greater prayer, greater devotion, and then less of distractions, less of things of the world, more of Christ in my life. And this is something that Jesus leaves us with, especially as this is something, his last public teaching before he goes into the Passover, before he goes to the agony in the garden, to his death on the cross, and then his eventual resurrection. This is something that's meant for all people to hear and act on. So as we transition to this period of Advent, let's act on it as early as now. Let's allow the Lord to be someone really present in our lives. Let's be mindful of Him. Let's be watchful as Jesus suggests and recommends for us. Actually, it's not a recommendation. It's an instruction. It's a command. And let's abide by this. So brothers and sisters, thanks for listening to this reflection on Pathways of Hope. If you're enjoying this content, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe it. The page, you can follow it. And please share this reflection also with more loved ones and people you care about. So God bless you.